My name is Gladys Bettis-Siebersert. I'm the Director of Public Policy and Management Programs here at Heinz College. And it's my pleasure to introduce our speaker here today. I met Noreen last fall, actually, when we both participated on a civic technology panel. And I was really struck by her leadership, her commitment to public service, and how she has really impacted public service by driving innovation. And we actually were using some of the same language on that panel. We were talking about how innovation is driven really by connecting people, policy, and technology. And so immediately after the panel, I had to approach her and say, you must come to Heinz College and speak with our students and share your lessons. So Noreen Hecmanczuk serves as the Senior Advisor to the Federal CIO, where she leverages her broad range of federal experience to drive innovation across government. As a strategic convener, she brings key stakeholders together to advance cybersecurity, IT modernization, data strategy, digital service delivery for the federal workforce so we can best serve the American people. That's only a small bit of her career. She has spent numerous years in public service, as I mentioned, working for the U.S. Department of Agriculture, the National Science Foundation, the Department of Labor, and she also served as a White House Leadership Fellow. Just prior to joining and serving for the office of the federal CIO, Noreen led the government relations portfolio for the United States Digital Service. Please join me in welcoming Noreen Hecmanczuk to Pennsylvania, to Carnegie Mellon University, and to Heinz College. She's here to speak on how to deliver impact through innovation.
Thank you all so much. Can you hear me okay? Okay, that's good. Thank you, Gladys. Gladys is a superstar. I hope you realize that you have a superstar among you here at CMU, and it's my pleasure to be with you today. I have had an amazing adventure across the federal government, and I'm hoping that by the end of today's talk, perhaps you could see yourself in service. I think how I would describe myself is a strategic convener. I try to see the big picture as to what's possible and bring all of the different folks together to drive innovation across a variety of different portfolios. Right now it's technology, but as Gladys indicated, I've been really privileged to work on some amazing missions. So I'd like to share those with you today. So, a few weeks ago, I flew to London to attend an international government innovation conference, and the flight attendant placed a cup of water on my tray table. And sometimes, like, moments in time take you back to prior moments in your life. Have you ever had that happen? You're like, wow, this is reminding me of this story of my dad and my mom and I. We took a trip to California to visit my sister, and the flight attendant put a cup of water on my dad's tray table. And my dad nudged me and said, look at that cup of water. And I was about 12, and I had no idea what he was talking about. It was just a cup of water on a tray table. And he went on to say, we are at 35,000 feet, going 550 miles an hour, and that water is absolutely still. It is not moving. And I said, oh, wow. You know, I had never really thought about that at all. So it made me, my dad had a way of making me think differently about life in general, but he was also born in 1929, just a few months before the Great Depression, and he went on with that story on that flight about just the innovation he had seen in his lifetime, from the Model A to high-performance sports cars, from the Concorde to the space shuttle. And little did I know on that trip at 12 years old that I would have an opportunity to just drive innovation across the federal government. So you recognize this. This is where we are. The state of Pennsylvania is my home state. So thank you for welcoming me back home. And if you were to drive 5 hours east, you'd hit a tiny town in northeastern Pennsylvania. Has anyone heard of the Pocono Mountains? Pocono Mountains. So I grew up in this tiny town called Pocono Lake. In the middle is my alma mater, Penn State University. One of the blessings I think about growing up in a small town is it gives you an opportunity to dream and imagine what's possible. At the time that I was growing up, there wasn't really a great deal going on, so I think this is where I became creative and just really tried to hone that skill. I didn't know what I was doing at the time, I was just young, but I had a great sense of imagination. I was a kid of the 80s, so the Sony Walkman was my vibe, loved it. Listened to a lot of cassette tapes, and a lot of music that my parents probably were not thrilled I was listening to be honest. MTV was a big thing, right? We were all super excited about it. And in 11th grade, we were all excited about cheering on Krista McAuliffe to go to space as the first teacher in space. As we know, that trip ended after 73 seconds, and I think when we think about innovation and discovery and forging that frontier, it's really not without its risks. But that was a moment in time I'll never forget. We've all had those, you've had those in your lifetime, but that was one for me as an 11th grade student that just, you never forget that story. So I thought I would share with you really the story, my story of service and my sense of duty to serving our country. I'm going to talk today about three key people, my mom, my dad, my Uncle Mike. And this picture that you're looking at is in a town just north of the Poconos. It's right outside of Scranton, Pennsylvania. It's called Jessup, Pennsylvania. My mom was the youngest. She's there, the little one. Youngest of 12 children. So this is only part of her siblings in this picture. Her father was an immigrant coal miner. And they didn't have much, but as I get older, I realize they had everything they needed and much, much more. My uncle, Mike, is there on the left, one of 6 boys. Uncle Mike was my godfather. We were extremely close. And what I realized in looking at this picture, I just learned so much looking back at old pictures, and you will see as you get older, the same will happen with your family. These origin stories are just so important to who we are and who we become. 8 years later, after this picture was taken, my Uncle Mike's life would actually change forever. So this is Uncle Mike at the age of 18. He's in the 2nd Armored Division of the United States Army, and he liked to joke that he won an all-expense-paid trip to Europe. He had never been out of Jessup, Pennsylvania, and he was asked to provide freedom to people he had never met. So the older I'd get, the more he would talk about his stories of the war and the more details he would share. 55 years after the D-Day invasion, Uncle Mike and I stood together on Omaha Beach and to reflect and remember. If you've seen Saving Private Ryan, I'm sure many people have seen that movie. That opening scene is just unbelievable. And when you stand on Omaha Beach and you look up at the cliffs, you just don't even, you can't imagine truly what those troops faced and what they thought as they hit that beach. The Americans and the Allies were certainly at a disadvantage, and it just was such a moment I will never forget. As I was thinking about my uncle on this trip and just watching how people were reacting to him, this is a group of French reenactors wearing American military uniforms to thank the Allies for bringing them freedom. And they realized that my uncle, he has, on the front of his hat, it said World War II veteran. He was actually in the Battle of the Bulge, but you can see them here reaching down. They just wanted to touch him and thank him. So I thought, you know, if he could do that for our country, the least I can do is try to make it better in whatever way I can. The other person I wanted to talk about is my mom. This is, again, youngest of 12. She went to college in the 1950s at a time when women were not encouraged to get a degree past high school. And so she received her undergraduate degree at University of Maryland. She came here to Pittsburgh for her graduate degree in physical therapy. And she treated patients from children to the elderly, everybody in between. She cared about them, right? She saw value in everyone. And what I saw in my mother, she was a pioneer in innovation. innovation design, engineering. And as a young child, just watching her, she'd say, come on, Noreen, we have to go to Michael's or Joanne Fabrics. I have to design a positioning device to help my patient straighten their arm or to do whatever they needed to do. These products were not available. There was no internet. You couldn't just order something. So she made it, with her own time and talent and money. She designed these products. And I just thought everybody's mother did things like that, right? I just thought, wow, okay, let's go do it. And so again, as I got older, I thought, wow, how special is that? Like, I didn't realize, who she was really. And last November, I was going through a box of pictures, and I found this one. I had never seen it, and it was such a gift. And I think that's what I loved about my mom and my dad and my Uncle Mike. They lived by thought, word, and deed. They were not putting things on Instagram. There was no Instagram. They were not sharing these things like, look at me, look what I've done. They just kind of did it, and they did it when no one was looking, and it just had such a profound impact on me. So that's a little about who I am, and this is the cartoon. You will see it says Pocono Record. That's the local newspaper from the Poconos, and a couple of months after I graduated from college and I moved to Washington to start my first job, this arrived in an envelope from my dad. And I think he just wanted me to know, don't forget where you came from, and always remember who you're there to serve. So that's a little about my origin story. And now, this is my journey on one PowerPoint slide. It's hard to believe, 30 years have passed. 30 is a humongous number. I hate to even admit that that's a real thing. And it goes super fast, but I was so inspired to work on these missions that you see before you. I could talk for 5 hours and share stories about the lessons that I've learned that maybe you could take in your future to go make a difference. One side note, and I wasn't planning on talking about this at all until Gladys pointed out that Hamburg Hall was the U.S. Bureau of Mines, the U.S. Bureau of Mines, this building that we're in. And so I'm going to point to that third logo in the middle, the Department of Labor. I worked for the Mine Safety and Health Administration. And on my first day when I met the leadership team and they introduced me, I brought with them my grandfather's certificate of competency to be a coal miner. He was a coal miner in the late 1800s, early 1900s. This building, I believe, was built in 1910-ish, 15. And so it was established to protect the health of someone like my grandfather. He didn't have them, right? And so I walked, they introduced me, and they were gonna just go around the table, frankly. Super great people, because they didn't know me and I didn't know them. And I said, you know what, I've got to tell you my story. 100 years later, remember my mom was the youngest of 12. So my grandfather was very old and I was very young, but 100 years later, I ended up working for the head of the agency that was in place to protect the health and safety of our nation's miners. That's incredible. And I walked that certificate forward and I said, sir, it's so nice to meet you. And I'd love for you to know this is my grandfather's certificate. Like, this means something to me, this job, and I'm super excited to be here with you. And they loved it. It was at Pennsylvania. I'm not going to get the district right, but it was the Northeastern Pennsylvania mining, and they all knew what it was. And so that's how I began that job. So this is a Venn diagram of my life. And the things I've just had the honor of working on, the different policies that I have impacted. I've done a lot of really great stuff. I've been honored to do it. I've worked with great team members to drive change forward in just so many important areas that we all count on. We don't think about it very much, but we depend on everything in this chart. So today, and I'm looking at my time, but I think I'm okay, I thought I would share 5 kind of highlights across my career to show you innovation can mean different things to different people, but these are ways that working with my teams at all of these places, we have driven innovation forward. So this is also on my flight to London. This was just 2 weeks ago, and they placed the food in front of me, and you'll see in that circle, I don't know if you can all see it, and you've seen this at your local grocery stores, there's a little seal, and it says, inspected and passed by the U.S. Department of Agriculture. Well, this was my first job in the federal government. So my colleagues inspected the product that I was eating on that flight to London, and that seal means a lot. The year here is 1993. This little boy's name is Riley Detweiler. He was 16 months old, and in Washington State, there was an outbreak of illness due to E. coli. We know E. coli now. We've heard of E. coli, Salmonella, Listeria, Campylobacter. You hear of those pathogens every day, but at this moment in time, when I was working at USDA, the biggest question we were getting in my Congressional Affairs office is, should I use a plastic or a wooden cutting board to prepare my food? This all changed in January of '93 when that Washington State outbreak happened. And it was E. coli, it was a cluster of illnesses, but scientists didn't know, how bad is this pathogen? Is there human-to-human transmission possible? How ill will people get? Nobody knew. But the Detweilers were reading about it. It was attributed to a fast food hamburger joint that actually undercooked the burgers. They had a bunch of 16-year-olds cooking burgers for their first job. They didn't use a thermometer. They served the hamburgers, people ate them, and people started getting sick. So the Detweilers said, well, we're not going to eat the hamburgers. We'll just not eat the hamburgers. But Riley was in a daycare. And there was another little boy in his family in that daycare that had consumed that product. And through unsanitary diaper changing station practices, there was a transmission from that little boy to Riley. Riley got sick, and sadly, he passed away. So he was one of 4 children that died. There were 171 people that were hospitalized. What this sad story brought about in food safety inspection was change. And sadly, that's what has to happen, right, to drive change at times. So I was on the team at the United States Department of Agriculture that modernized our meat and poultry inspection system to make sure it's based on science. And if you don't think large-scale modernization is possible, yes it is. Does it take time? Yes it does. Does it take stakeholder engagement and sitting in meetings like this, where I was a congressional affairs staffer, meeting with members of Congress and their meat, poultry, and eggplant owners who were saying, no one has ever gotten sick from my product. And we said, well, with respect, how do we really know? Because we haven't done microbial testing on your product. Right, so we sat through really contentious meetings. I flew all over this country as the Congressional Affairs representative, as the strategic convener and connector in between our inspection personnel and the congressional staff and their constituents. And so we rolled this regulation out. We gave processors 3 years to comply, very big processors that you'll go to the grocery store and see big name products. They had 1 year to comply. Middle-sized folks had 2 years. Very small folks had 3. We paired them together with state and local extension service people to make sure they had the help that they needed, and we drove the change forward. So this is a list of things that I will tell you is possible, when you're trying to do large-scale modernization. One of the things that I'd like to point out is the second from the bottom, which is I took congressional staff members into these facilities so they could see how our food supply is produced. And what that was, and there were no words around it, was really human-centered design, right? To me, it was just, it makes sense that we want to see the people writing the legislation to kind of see farm-to-table food safety, so they could write the best legislation. The last thing, too, I will say, if you don't own a food thermometer, please buy one, and please use it. It's so serious. If you cook food for children, for the elderly, for people that have compromised immune systems, you should be taking the temperature of that product, because although we put really great things in place at the Department of Agriculture, there is that last mile of getting it to your table safely. So from the grocery store, don't stop and do something for 2 hours. Get the products right into your freezer or refrigerator, cook it thoroughly, take the temperature, and when in doubt, throw it out, is what I would say. Or take it back to the place of purchase for a refund. You could do that too. So that's food safety. Okay, I moved on then to the National Science Foundation. Very different environment. At USDA, it's regulatory health and safety, very serious. Learned all about crisis communication and really tough issues, life and death issues. And then I got to the National Science Foundation, and they said, hey, welcome, this is where discoveries begin, and if we don't discover it today, there's always tomorrow. And my mind was blown. This was a very different environment for me inside the federal government. I have this graphic here because I'm a mom of 3 daughters. Sad to admit that I took them for a fast food dinner. Actually, I still eat the products because we do have the most safe food supply in the world, hands down. But as a working mom, I just needed to feed my kids. And we were at a Wendy's eating dinner. And Lester Holt, you all know Lester Holt, I heard his voice. And Lester Holt, there was a flat screen TV in the restaurant. And he said, the science of the Summer Olympics brought to you by NBC Learn and the National Science Foundation. And my daughter, who was 9 at the time, said, hey, Mom, that's where you work, isn't it? And I said, yeah, and why am I learning about this awesome thing in a Wendy's, right? That's crazy. So I went back into work, and I said, what's going on? Are we doing something with NBC? And they said, yeah, 100 million people watch this thing. I said, yeah, but no one inside the National Science Foundation has heard of it. Like, this is good news. Why aren't we sharing the good news? And so what this led to over a couple of years was standing up a formal internal comms program that was integrated with external communication. So before we would go out to Congress and the media, we started at home. This is probably hard to see. I'm happy to share these slides if you want to look at them. But what it did was so many great things. It engaged the workforce. It informed the workforce. Like in any organization that you're in, after you leave here, wherever you go, always remember to communicate with your people. Your people want to feel like they know from you first before they read about something in their Google alert. So that's what we tried to do. I just talked to a friend the other day. He said we called it the weekly wire. He said it's still going strong. And that really warmed my heart because it made it a better place to work. The other thing that we did is we highlighted the people of the National Science Foundation because really when I think of broadening inclusion and diversity and just learning about who we're sitting next to, in this diagram or in this picture, you will see PhD scientists from academia, so people from here that go to NSF, career scientists, as well as business and operations folks that support the agency's mission. It takes everybody to drive these missions forward and the innovation forward. And you may not notice this. You all see that? I don't know. In the bottom right, that's your president at Carnegie Mellon. So I thank him. If you see Dr. Jahanian, tell him thank you for jumping into the flip side because it takes leaders to jump in and share their personal stories with us. And I very much appreciated that. So we also reinstituted, and it's hard to believe they weren't doing it, Take Your Child to Work Day. It's like, oh my gosh, we've got robots. We've got like all of this basic science that we're funding that's super great, and we have the people that can talk about it. What it takes sometimes is somebody to lead it. So I raised my hand, led it for 4 years. It was phenomenal. In this picture, we use technology, right? We put kids into green screen situations based on the science that we were funding at the National Science Foundation. We also had a live feed to, if I could have gotten the video clip, I would have shown it to you, but a live feed to Antarctica so the kids could talk to an Antarctic scientist in real time. We had an awesome connection. And this is a picture with former NSF Director France Cordova with the children that showed up that year. All right, moving on. Is this working for everybody? Are you enjoying these stories? Isn't it? Okay, good. I want to make sure. I can also move faster. I forgot, this is my last slide. So NSF, so it makes it a best place to work, right? And NSF, just at the end of last month, is rated the 2nd place best to work in a mid-size agency in the federal government. So yeah, let's inspire the innovators. Don't forget about doing that. Have fun. Make our communities best places to work. Okay, moving on. So when I was with the United States Digital Service, we had a team embedded at the Department of Veterans Affairs to give our veterans a better experience. This is the story of Emerson, who's a Vietnam veteran, who sadly had 7 usernames and passwords to access, and 7 entry points to request a prescription refill. This was confusing. It was a frustrating, fractured experience for Emerson, And we really deserve to give our veterans, people that have given their all for us, the ability to have a simple, seamless, and secure experience when they interact with our government. So what we did is we rolled out a brand new digital front door to the Department of Veterans Affairs. It doesn't look like much, but I think there's so much here that I'd like to kind of highlight a few of these things. The top 20 tasks on the front page are the tasks that veterans, caregivers, their family members told us that they needed. We learned that through customer research, human-centered design, working side by side. We didn't design for them, we designed with them. That's very important. These 20 tasks will change based on what veterans' needs are, right? We have an aging veteran population. There might be new needs that come out from future conflicts for our veterans. We also had great results. I could talk forever about the VA team. It's one of our more advanced teams in government because they've just been embedded there longer. But the VA is really, our VA team is an example of what's possible all across government. So we use the VA team to test ideas, and then we know that we can scale them. And we know when we see these success stories, we will get support, right, from our oversight community to move forward in that area. And I don't, notable here for me is there's a government app that has a 4.8 star rating. I think that's the first time ever something like that has happened with the government. So is this change possible? Yes. Is it slow? Yes. Is it frustrating at times? Yes. Is it meaningful? Absolutely. This was a little thing we did on Capitol Hill. We did a demo day, and the Washington Post picked it up. They realized this is simple, right? We just need to convene the people to make it happen. Lots of great people in this picture working on lots of missions across the government. And then lessons learned, we can deliver modern products and services that meet today's needs. We can drive that impact with taxpayer dollars. We should be doing that. That's a no-brainer. We can reduce burden for our workforce. They didn't come to serve to move paper and to punch in data and have fat finger errors. They came to serve the people that they care about and the missions that they care about. And when we engage them and senior leaders and members of Congress in this effort, hopefully we inspire other people to join us on this journey. So, shifting administrations, I arrived for the first time at the White House at the end of the Obama administration. Right before, you may have heard of it, there was a pretty big election that happened. I was there in October of 2016. And then the election, of course, was that November. And so my project for this fellowship program, it was to lead a major initiative across the federal enterprise. So it became known as the Burden Reduction Project. And so what that is, memos are really big at OMB, right? This is how we drive change through paper. But we do make them electronic and hopefully accessible, right? Like we push those out, but this is the burden reduction effort that at the time Mick Mulvaney was the OMB director. And the question was asked, what are we asking agencies to do with all of these guidance and policy documents that we ship out to 430 federal agencies? Do you all ever clean the closet? Do you ever look at what you're asking agencies to do and determine whether or not it's still necessary, right? Because what you have to realize when you're in the center of government and you push these policies out, there are people at all of these agencies saying, OMB is saying that I have to send them that report. And instead of focusing on higher value work, they're focused on a report that perhaps is outdated, obsolete, isn't going to matter in the grand scheme of things. And when it gets to OMB, perhaps people are not even really giving it much attention. Isn't that a shame, right? So we knew we could do better. This was really a great government project. Everyone across OMB agreed. So I led this project and the teams. This is a headline that we got. It was called The War on Waste. And actually, this is what Mick Mulvaney said about it, and I thought it was true. I put this quote in here. It was driven by career staff. Political appointees can't drive some of this work because we're the career people that span from administration to administration, that kind of understand where we were at the end of one and kind of listen to candidates on the campaign trail Like, what are they saying that they would like to do? Someone wins, and then we welcome the new team, and we say, hey, we've been listening, and we think that here are some areas that you might like to pursue in your president's management agenda. I failed to mention, this is my 6th president, 6 administrations. I've been proud to serve in every one, because in serving every administration, I'm serving the American people, and that's why I got into this work in the first place. This shows you how burden reduction, that was kind of a small project in the grand scheme of things. We were able to rescind or eliminate 59 policies and guidance documents, but really change, that first step is the hardest thing. So what we were able to do is have it catch on. People started talking about reducing burden. It became a thing. This is President Biden's President's Management Agenda, and it is in here about reducing burden, so it has continued. So let's think differently. Let's carry good ideas forward from administration to administration, and there's great benefit to having that continuity so that we just don't stop and start again, right? Let's just keep these good things going. If people want to rebrand them, that's perfectly fine. But if the idea is good, it's good. Like, let's keep it moving forward. Okay, so we're up to today. I think I'm okay, Gladys, I'm so sorry. So this is today. This is the Office of the Federal CIO at the White House. I do have some, here we go. We are the White House Tech Policy Office. We lead efforts to manage and prioritize $120 billion on technology that matters and will deliver for the American people. Our office is responsible for stopping foreign intrusions into U.S. agencies' networks, providing expertise in digital identity and AI, redefining security expectations for software in the cloud, improving the digital experience and driving digital transformation forward. We're working on zero trust network architecture. We are working on encryption and multi-factor authentication and more. I work with unbelievable colleagues that are super smart, super driven, imaginative, collaborative. We work very closely with many offices across the Executive Office of the President and outside in federal agencies. And we were just talking earlier, GSA is one of them. And I know we have an alum of Chris, 18F. Thank you for your service, sitting right there. So Congress, is investing in us, and they're also expecting for us to drive change forward with those taxpayer dollars. And I agree. I want to do the same thing. What we have to do is we have to be able to show them what's possible, and we do that through storytelling and getting the stories out, because the public we're serving are their constituents. It's the same group of people, right? So the congressional staff that come to serve and represent Pittsburgh, because they care about Pittsburgh, are dealing with all of these questions and paper, and that's happening in all of these offices, over 535 offices, right? We have 435 in the House, 100 in the Senate. So all of these people that care about serving are just kind of burdened with paper and systems and the same questions, so we know we can improve. So this is what we believe, right? The public deserves a simple, seamless, and secure experience when they interact with our government. And one thing that we've seen is the pandemic. One day I was in a meeting where they were talking about repatriating the federal workforce that was in China, and the next day we're fully remote. And for the United States government to go fully remote, that's a huge deal, right? GSA, where Chris worked, that's an agency where telework was embraced. Telework's not embraced everywhere, so this was a huge shift for the federal government to switch overnight. And I'm proud to say we did really great things. It allowed us to innovate, right? It allowed us to kind of jump over years of discussions to kind of get to a new place. And so when you have people, you have to remember too, you know this, private sector companies did the same thing, right? So you all order food on an app, you know your driver's name, you know where your driver is, you know when they're out front, and you'll get a picture of your food, like as it arrives, right? So those expectations for the public when they interact with our government are the same. And are we there yet? We're not, right? We need people to come to help us get there. Is it possible? Yes, it is. It is possible to get there. So they always say, if you're wondering what people care about, look at the budget. And so what I will say is the president just released his budget a few weeks ago, technology is a huge part of this budget. It is our foundation, right? It is the foundational layer that is there to drive our mission forward. And these are the main buckets of work that we're focused on. We like to talk about deploying technology that's secure by design, and cybersecurity really is the tip of the spear. Cybersecurity is driving everything forward, and we're kind of like putting on top of that IT modernization and digital experience and data as a strategic asset it's going to drive us forward in a tremendous way. But one of the things we have to do a better job, and we are, at identifying is where are these agencies on their journey. Because one of the worst things you can do if you watch, I'm a fan of Home and Garden TV, I watch too many of these home shows, but if you ever, they're all the same, right? They have the same formula. People have dreams about their second story addition. The contractor comes in and says, yeah, that's great, I can do that, but you know what, I was looking around your basement and it's leaking, you have knob and tube wiring, all of these things that have to be invested in your basement, or else that investment for the second story is just not smart, right? No one wants to invest in the stuff you can't see, right? But we must, right? Because we have to be able to support these missions. And so this is what we're doing. I was nerding out on a memo that was released by former National Cyber Director Chris Inglis and our Director of OMB, Shalonda Young, came together to issue a joint memo identifying cybersecurity priorities, identifying gaps in agencies, plugging those gaps, because what that's going to allow us to do is make sure we're making the right investments at the right time based on where agencies are on their journeys, so we can deliver impact on taxpayer dollars, get them on the path. That's really what's important. They have to be on a path, and that path should continue from year to year, administration to administration. When presidents come in, they have their policy agendas. Their policy agendas sit on that technology layer, right? So we're focused on the technology layer and driving change through that. It will also allow us to retire legacy systems and do so many other things that I could go on about. So cybersecurity, you, I'm sure are aware, I hope, of what I have on my screen here. It's the President's Executive Order on Cybersecurity, the National Cybersecurity Strategy, and our Zero Trust Strategy. What I will say about the President's Executive Order is this is what is setting agencies on a path to multi-factor authentication, a software bill of materials, zero trust architecture, and it's a paradigm shift for how we protect our systems. We're partnering with everybody that you might imagine we should be partnering with. So the federal civilian side, my boss is the head of that, over 430 agencies. We have the Department of Defense, and then we have the intelligence community. So when we are aware of the problem sets, we can better protect the enterprise. They have conversations all the time in secure locations to share information so that we can all be driving forward together to protect our enterprise. The National Cybersecurity Strategy was just released in early March, and it builds on the President's Cybersecurity Executive Order. There are two fundamental shifts in this strategy. It's really lifting and shifting the burden of cybersecurity to those best positioned to handle it in the public and private sectors. And it's also realigning incentives so that folks can focus and be incentivized to focus on those longer-term durable solutions to ensure their cybersecurity posture versus quick wins that really won't meet the mark. I mentioned Claire Martirana, the federal CIO, Chris DeRusha, is our federal CISO in our office, and he also wears a dual-hatted role. He's in a dual-hatted role as the Deputy National Cybersecurity Director for Federal. So he's in charge of all federal cybersecurity. And again, these partnerships are just key to driving that innovation across government. So switching gears, digital experience. Digital experience, this is something the President says, and he's talking about, you just shouldn't have to know how to like interact with our government. It shouldn't be this hard. The President released an executive order on improving customer experience. And really what it does is it's human-centered design, putting people at the center of everything we do, designing with them, for the users, deploying minimally viable products, iterating, showing people what's possible. We're focused on life experiences. People experience life, they don't experience government org charts, right? So if you have a tornado or a disaster and you're trying to recover from it, you might have to operate across 5 or 6 or 7 agencies, and you may not even know what those agencies are and how they all connect. So when you think of a car, right, we're responsible for everything under the hood. You just want to get from point A to point B to point C and go on and complete your tasks. Let us care and focus on the stuff under the hood to get you to where you need to be. People, again, this is something that is within our grasp. We just want them to have a successful experience and go back to their life. This is something we're also in discovery on and we're passionate about. The public deserves one answer when they're interacting with our government. What does this mean? This means a single answer to a question. When you Google something and say, how do I apply for Medicare? You should get one answer. It should be accurate, credible, timely, right? And you should be able to trust that that's the right answer. We're the United States of America. This is 2023. This should be possible. We are committed to doing this, and we're driving forward on this. There should be no duplicative content. It should be plain and easy language, SEO and AI optimized content. What will happen is we'll see call center volume go down. People are waiting in long queues. They don't need to talk to a human necessarily, right? They just have to reset a password, right? I talked about this with Gladys when we were on that panel, right? We did a 6-week sprint and proved to an agency, there's a new way to work, we can do it in 6 weeks, get people out of your queue and get them to the answers that they need so they can go about their day. We know that the 80% of the questions that come in from the American people are focused really across 6 agencies. So it's IRS, it's Medicare, it's SSA, student aid, you probably all deal with the Department of Education, I would imagine, State Department for Travel, and the VA, of course. And so we know that if we can focus on the top 100 questions that are asked, right, that 80% of the people are asking and have authentic, trusted content that goes out, we can deliver impact for 252 million people a month. That's exciting, right? So that's what we're working toward, and we hope to be able to talk about some of that soon. So we have to make sure that people aren't bypassing us. If they can't find the answer, they could go down a rabbit hole and get off track. They could be charged by people that have realized that we're not really delivering what we need. They could be charged a fee to interact with our government. You shouldn't be charged a fee to interact with our government. It's your taxpayer dollars paying for these government services. And then we know machine learning is pushing us to take seriously the knowledge that we publish and the language we use on our government websites. We're here to do the most good for the most people in the most need. And one of the things I would love for us to do more, and this is how we'll get traction, is to tell the customer's story, which is the constituent story for the member of Congress. And we have to show them that, hey, if you invest in us, and we'll invest in small amounts, let us drive that product forward, and we'll prove to you through a briefing. We'll do a demo, not a memo, right? We're gonna show you that this works, and they will hopefully think that that's a good thing, and the investments will come. So this is the impact that we know we can make, and the reasons why all of this is important. This is good government work. It's bipartisan work. That's really what I've loved about my portfolio. We have a lot of noise in our world, and you could focus on that, or you could focus on, let's just ignore that and focus on what we can deliver. I think there's great power in doing that. And I put this quote in, my boss said this at a conference recently. I'll let you read this. She's passionate about accessibility. And we were together yesterday, and I said, I'm looking at this picture of my mom, and I never really connected accessibility, her accessibility, to what we're here and what we have the opportunity to do through technology, right? But it's been running through my life. And now I'm sitting at a place where we can be delivering for millions of people that are counting on us. So here we go. We can deliver a digital experience that is secure by design and accessible for all, have consistent visual design and brand identity, so when they land on this website, they know they're truly dealing with the United States of America. trusted content, mobile first, it works on all devices, simple, seamless, and secure. The list goes on. This is an innovative funding model, switching gears, IT modernization. So Congress, we just celebrated the 5th anniversary of the Technology Modernization Fund. And what this is a pot of money that we received $1 billion through the American Rescue Plan to invest in high need projects across the federal enterprise. And so my boss is the chair of this board. These proposals from agencies are interrogated on a technology basis to make sure that they're sound. We have people work with agency teams across the road and check in to make sure that they are on track. And we only fund them, they get an award, but we fund them incrementally to make sure that they are meeting their milestones. On the right, you will see the tons of people that we are helping. I was just on a call with my team yesterday, and I'm so excited about the storytelling that's going to come out of this, because this is what's going to help us drive the change. So this, right now, of that $1 billion, we've invested $700 million over 40 investments across 24 agencies, and we've interrogated and reviewed 220 proposals that add up to $3.5 billion in funding demand. So there's a demand for working differently in government. So, going back to London, this is us. I wanted to share this picture because at that conference in London, we had the opportunity to meet with the Government Digital Service, which is equivalent to our United States Digital Service, and then the UK Cabinet, the CIO and Data Office folks, but also governments from Germany, Estonia, Singapore, Iceland, and South Africa. And really, we're all facing the same challenges. We're learning from one another, we're sharing lessons learned, and we know when we collaborate across the international boundaries, we're stronger. This is one of my favorite quotes from our 26th president. I use it on my LinkedIn page, I just use it everywhere I go. I really believe we can, again, focus on all of the things that are really, really hard, or you could just do this. And I think when you focus on this, you go, wow, there's a lot I can do. And I took this picture yesterday morning. I got into work really early. I looked at my iPhone, it was 6:56. The sun was rising. And I think what I would say about this picture is, I've been looking out of this window and have been honored to be able to look out of this window for 2 years. And if I am not thinking big and looking out of this window, I shouldn't be looking out of this window. I should move on and allow someone else to come in and imagine what's possible for the American people. I just feel like I carry the weight of 330 million people that are saying, Noreen, help us figure it out. Could you just figure it out? And so I try to do my best to do that. So, I love this. Life short, think big, make an impact. You can. Many people here I know in your programs have been in the PMF program and the PIF program, I think Digital Core as well. There are so many different ways you can enter the government. Sometimes we don't make it quite so easy, but what I will promise, and Gladys, I'm happy to share my contact information if you have a burning desire to come and work on some of these impactful programs and missions, please contact me, and I'm happy to get you to talk to someone at an agency that you're passionate about, at a tech team that you're passionate about, or a policy team that you might want to work for. I'm happy to make those introductions, because the hardest way to get into government is your first job. Once you're in, you can maneuver all around and do unbelievable work. I have a final postscript. So this is a story back to innovation and about dreaming big and never letting anybody tell you that things are not possible. This is Charlie Bolden, the former administrator of NASA. Right at the end of the Obama administration, this is one of the last meetings he took, was with our fellowship program. And he talked about his incredible journey as a marine aviator and fighter pilot and astronaut, and just leadership lessons, and it was just wonderful. And he talked about creativity and innovation and thinking big. And I went up at the end and I just thanked him and asked if I could get my picture with him. And I just told him that I appreciated his inspiration, because I'm trying to do the same. And sometimes it's hard, right? And sometimes you don't believe that you can get it done, right? And he said, Noreen, he said, I never thought I had what it took to be an astronaut. And he said, do you know who it was who encouraged me that I did? He said it was Ron McNair. Right? So to me, that's emotional. Like that, we looked at one another, and I had tears in my eyes, and I thanked him. So, this is what he says. He wants us to get to Mars. And the good news is, we're going to get there, because this team at NASA is called SwampWorks. And I know we're going to get there. They are recreating the conditions on the moon as we speak, so they can take, and you probably know all about this much better than me, I would say moon dust and all of the things on the moon, to build a space station, a place for our astronauts to go, so they could use it as a place to get to Mars. And the reason that I know it's going to happen is because Quavo and his team at Kennedy Space Center are going to get us there. He is a White House Leadership Fellow that I met. We're good friends. He is super inspiring to talk to, and I have no doubt that they're going to do it. So that's it. Thank you so much. I think I ran over, Gladys. So Gladys provided me with some questions, and I'm happy to run through these and answer them in rapid mode. Is that interesting to anyone? Yes? Okay. So what is your most significant challenge in your current role? I would say if you try to, it's easy to boil the ocean, and you can't do it. You got to kind of like pick one thing and just try to figure out where are we in our world and how can we drive change. So it's like figuring that out, finding the team of people that can do it. What would you suggest to a policymaker where they don't know how to envision being more efficient and responsive to citizen needs? I think it's about educating them, demos, not memos, showing them what's possible, getting their buy-in, that you can deliver impact with taxpayer dollars. Let's see, how does innovation get implemented at the White House? Are there the goals for a better government when policymakers have differing views? I think, like, I would answer this by saying there's so much good government work that we can do in our portfolio that we're focused on really finding that synergy between the president's vision for what we're trying to do and finding people that we can partner with on the Hill to drive it forward. And again, that storytelling piece and kind of showing those examples is key. We're still not where we need to be, frankly. It's a little harder than you might imagine, but I have no doubt we're going to get there. Federal information systems are notorious for being behind the times and antiquated from a technological standpoint. What steps is the Office of the Federal CIO taking to drive innovation? I would say that's the Technology Modernization Fund, right? We have a unique opportunity to work outside of the annual appropriations process to test new ideas and new ways of working to drive change. Tensions between global superpowers are rising. How is the Office of the Federal Chief Information Officer preparing to address and mitigate those threats? I would say that that's what I talked about before with having very close relationships with the Office of the National Cyber Director, the National Security Council, DOD, intelligence community, all of our partners, CISA, right? They are all meeting all the time and talking, and it's great to see. What can a regular citizen do other than vote to make government better? How can we get involved and encourage action? I would say when we share information on LinkedIn and I'm going to get the social media accounts for the work that we're doing. If you feel so encouraged and it inspires you, please share it with your networks and put a topper message on it and say something about why it matters. I think like getting people in your generation to talk with excitement about the work that we're undertaking would make more of a difference than me going and giving this talk to, 100 more schools. Okay, can the government be the front runner in employing IT technologies and drive change rather than simply catching up to the private sector? So I would say yes, our Zero Trust strategy, we put it out for public comment. We embraced public-private partnerships to make that strategy the best that it could be. It was a great way to proceed. We're super excited about doing that with more policies and guidance documents that we are going to be delivering in the future. And the last question is, what moment are you most proud of in your career? I think you've seen, I'm proud of everything I just showed you, but as a working mom of 3 daughters who are now 22, 19, and 15, they've been on this adventure with me. They cheer me on. I have a supportive husband. They love my love for our country. I hope my love for our country is their love for our country. They're my next generation. And one of the most inspiring moments really was in the last administration. I graduated from that leadership program at the White House. And the deputy director for management came up and met me and my girls and said to them, one of the most kind things I have, and women in the workplace, this is hard being a working mom, right, and balancing all of these things, especially when you work at this level, but she said, you know, she said to the girls, I know your mom probably missed a lot of things, right? Field trips and, you know, events in your life, but I want you to recognize that the work that she was not with you, or the events that she was not with you, you know, doing, were going on to help millions of people. So that was inspiring to me, and it was one of my most favorite moments of my career. So that was it.